in order to write the name of an ionic compound containing a metal having more than one possible positive charge. If you notice here in my periodic table, I have some positive elements, specifically those found in the D block element, which we call the transition metals. The transition metals and some of other metals have more than one oxidation number, more than one charge when they form an ion. So in this case, whenever we want to write the name of the ionic formula, of the ionic compound formula that they are having, we need to use a Roman number in order to express the correct charge of this metal. So as I mentioned here, we use Roman numbers next to the name of the metal ion to express its positive charge, since it might have more than one. And how do we know this positive charge? We don't need to know the charge, we don't need to memorize the charge from the periodic table. We can guess the charge of that metal simply by looking at the number subscript written next to the atom next to it. So for example, this contain Fe, and I know that Fe is located over here in the periodic table having more than one positive charge. So when I'm writing the name, I would write iron oxide. However, next to iron, I need to put a Roman number expressing the charge of the iron. And the charge of the iron would be the subscript written next to the next ion. So here it's written 3, so it is iron 3 oxide. Of course, you use Roman numbers. Roman numbers, one line is 1, 2 lines represent 2, 3 represents 3, IV represents 4, V represents 5. So let's look at this one. NiBr2, I'm gonna leave this till the end. These two till the end. Whenever we don't have number, there's just like an additional thinking step that we need to do. So let's take this nickel bromide. Nickel have more than one oxidation state. So the name is not just simply nickel bromide. I need to express the charge of nickel. And in order to know the charge of nickel, I'm gonna look at the number written next to Br. So this is nickel 2 bromide. Again, I have here another example with lead. And lead, of course, has more than one oxidation state. So this is lead phosphide. And the charge of lead, I can guess it by looking at the number subscript written next to the element near lead. So here there's number 2, so I'm going to write lead 2. So 2 represents the charge of lead. And finally, iron chloride, but this iron is simply iron 3 because next to Cl it's written 3. So iron 3 chloride. Now, in order to look at the remaining examples, since there are no numbers written in the formula, guessing the charge would be simply by looking at the charge of the other atom and taking it as a positive charge to the metal. So in order to know the charge of Sn, since I don't see any numbers written in this formula, I need to find the charge of S in the periodic table and write the number. Again, I need to know the charge of S in the periodic table and write it as a number, or the charge of Br and write it as a number. So first, this is tin sulfide. Now, tin, how much? S belongs to group 16 and S has a -2 charge. So tin here is gonna have just 2. Again here, copper, 2 sulfide. Finally, the last one, copper bromide. Now, knowing the charge of bromide, which is Br -1, it's gonna be copper 1 bromide.